The conference room was silent except for the faint ticking of the clock. You sat at the far end of the long glass table, your laptop open, files neatly stacked beside you. Across from you, the clients were discussing figures and market reach, their voices calm but expectant. Mrs. John, one of them finally said, leaning forward slightly, "What's your opinion on the proposed merger? You have analyzed both companies' quarterly growth. Do you think this partnership would be beneficial?" You looked up from your notes, composed as ever. Even though you were nervous, you always were before giving your opinion. Your face showed nothing but quiet confidence. You glanced briefly to your right, where Junguk sat, your CEO and your husband. 9 months into your contract marriage, 9 months of pretending it was only about business, and yet every time his eyes met yours, it didn't feel like business at all. Clearing your throat softly, you spoke. "I believe it's a small move. Both companies share similar goals and resources, but the key will be balance. If we maintain separate management for the first 2 quarters and then merge under one board, the transition will be smoother." Clients nodded. One of them smiled, as expected from John Corporation Secretary. "No, Mrs. John." You returned the smile politely. "Just doing my job." Corner of your eye, you could see Jungkook sitting with his usual composure, suit perfectly fitted, fingers tapping lightly on the table. He didn't say much during meetings. He didn't need to. His silence carried more authority than most people's speeches. "Good point," Jungkook finally said, his deep voice breaking through the murmurs. "Let's add that to the proposal draft." His eyes flickered toward you briefly, a silent acknowledgement. You gave a small nod, your chest warming at the rare moment of subtle approval. But then something twisted in your stomach. Your hand moved to your lips, the wave hit fast, a sudden dizzying nausea. Excuse me for a moment," you muttered, standing up quickly. All eyes turned to you. You managed a polite smile before almost stumbling toward the door. Jungkook's brow furrowed slightly, but he stayed seated. He couldn't just get up, not in front of clients. Still, his jaw tightened, and his gaze followed you until the door shut behind you. Mr. Daniel spoke. "Should we wait for Mrs. John?" Jungkook nodded, and then the silence fell, but his eyes stayed on the door, worried about you. In the bathroom, you leaned against the cold sink, breathing heavily. The fluorescent light flickered slightly as you splashed cold water on your face. Your reflection looked pale, tired, and confused. "What's the issue? Why I'm feeling weird all of a sudden?" "That's the second time today," you whispered to yourself. You had felt nauseous earlier in the morning too, but you brushed it off as stress. Maybe it was just fatigue. You had been overworking. You rinsed your mouth, inhaled deeply, and tried to smile at your reflection. "It's fine, just a bad breakfast," you mumbled, adjusting your blouse and brushing your hair back before walking out again. When you returned, the room went silent for a second. Jungkook's eyes found you instantly. "You okay?" he mouthed quietly, his expression unreadable but his tone gentle. You nodded quickly, sitting back down. "I'm fine, I'm sorry for the inconvenience," you said, looking at the others who were present in the meeting. "There's nothing to be sorry about, Mrs. John." You smiled. Jungkook cleared his throat, sitting straight. "Let's continue the meeting." Meeting continued for another half hour. You stayed quiet, jotting down key points, occasionally exchanging looks with Jungkook, small, silent looks that neither of you knew how to explain. When the deal was finalized and the client stood to leave, everyone shook hands, exchanged smiles, and promised to be in touch soon. Once the door closed and the last client left, you exhaled softly, relieved. You began gathering the documents when Jungkook's voice broke the silence. "Ryan?" He looked up. "Yes." He stood near the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at the city skyline. The afternoon light softened the sharpness of his features. "The contract," he began, his tone calm but distant. "It's been 9 months." Froze slightly. Yep, it has. He turned to you then, eyes unreadable. I asked the lawyer to prepare the divorce papers this morning. I thought it would be better to settle things before the year ends. Your hand stilled over the file. Something inside your chest twisted painfully. Oh, you said softly, keeping your voice steady. That's fine. He studied your face for a second, maybe expecting some reaction, but you didn't give any. You smiled politely, though your throat felt tight. I'll cooperate with whatever needed. Jungkook nodded once, his expression as composed as ever. Good. Thank you. The rest of the day dragged painfully. You couldn't focus. Your mind kept replaying his words. Divorce papers. It shouldn't hurt. It wasn't supposed to hurt. This was a contract marriage. You knew it would end, but still you had fallen for him. Wyan, you looked up from your desk. Jungkook stood by your office door, jacket in hand. You look pale. You should go home early. Managed a small smile. Actually, I was about to ask for that. I might stop by the hospital on my way home. His brows furrowed slightly. Hospital? You nodded. Just to get a checkup. I have been feeling a little weird lately. For a moment his gaze softened, concern flickering in his eyes. You want me to come with you? You shook your head. No, I'll go by myself. One of us needs to be here. I'll manage. He looked at you for a second as if wanted to say something, but then he masked it and nodded. Alright, take care and text me if you need me. That simple line, text me if you need me, warmed your heart, even though you knew he probably didn't mean it the way you wished he did. I will, you replied softly, packing your things. The hospital smelled faintly of antiseptic and coffee. You sat in the waiting area, fingers nervously tapping your bag. When your name was called, you stood and followed the nurse inside. After the initial questions, the doctor asked about your symptoms. You mentioned nausea, fatigue, and dizziness. She smiled slightly, tapping something into her system. Let's do a quick test, she said. You nodded, not thinking much, until 15 minutes later, when the doctor walked back in with a file in hand. Mrs. John, she said gently, sitting across from you. Congratulations. You blinked. What? She smiled kindly. You're pregnant. Your heart stopped. The words echoed in your ears, faint but heavy. Pregnant? You repeated, almost whispering. She nodded. About 5 weeks, I would say. Everything looks normal so far. You just sat there frozen, your hands resting on your lap, eyes unfocused. Pregnant. You were pregnant with Jungkook's child. Same Jungkook who told you that morning he had already asked the lawyer to prepare the divorce papers. A small, trembling breath escaped your lips as you whispered, What am I supposed to do now? The doctor smiled gently, unaware of the storm inside you. Take care of yourself. That's the most important thing. You nodded slowly, clutching the file to your chest as you stepped out of the hospital. The evening sky was painted with soft pink clouds, but you barely noticed. You stood on the sidewalk, wind brushing against your hair, your mind spinning. You wanted to tell him, you wanted to see his reaction, hear his voice, feel his arms around you, but then you remembered his words again. You almost forgot it was a contract marriage, especially after that night when he confronted his love to you and everything happened between you both. I asked the lawyer to prepare the divorce papers, and so you smiled bitterly to yourself, whispering under your breath, I guess it will be our little secret. The first tear fell before you even realized it. You reached home late that evening. Still dazed, the hospital's words echoed in your mind again and again. You are pregnant. You stood in front of the mirror, your hand instinctively resting on your abdomen. The world outside was quiet, city lights twinkling faintly through your window. Everything should have felt magical, but instead your chest ached. You sat down on the edge of your bed, whispering to yourself, "What a perfect time to get pregnant." He already asked for the divorce. You could still see Jungkook's calm face from earlier, his unreadable tone, his perfectly polite words. He didn't even hesitate. You smiled weakly, forcing yourself to lie down. Maybe rest would stop your thoughts from spinning. Didn't realize when sleep took over. Meanwhile, Jungkook was still in his office. The building was silent now, the city lights reflecting on the glass walls around him. Everyone had gone home hours ago, except him. His jacket hung over his chair, tie loosened, hair slightly messy from running his hand through it too many times. He sighed, staring at the blank divorce draft on his desk. His lawyer had sent the file that afternoon, but he hadn't signed it yet. He had told you he did, but he didn't because something about it didn't feel right. When Jungkook finally reached home, it was close to midnight. The penthouse was dark except for the faint light from your room. He walked quietly to your door, stopping for a moment before pushing it open. You were asleep, curled up on one side of the bed, your arm resting near your face. The soft light fell across your features. You looked peaceful and heartbreakingly distant. He stepped closer, his eyes tracing the faint dark circles under your eyes, the tiredness he had noticed for days. He wanted to ask you what was wrong earlier, when you rushed out of the meeting, when you looked pale and weak, but the timing was wrong. The room was full of clients and he didn't want to make you uncomfortable. Now, seeing you like this, his chest felt heavy. He sat down quietly on the chair near the bed, resting his elbows on his knees. His gaze softened and a quiet sigh escaped him. This beautiful moment came to an end, huh? You didn't even ask me to think again. He whispered under his breath. His voice was low, tired, but full of something he couldn't name. He looked at your sleeping face again, searching for answers in the calmness you wore. Didn't you feel it, the way I do, every time I look at you? He rubbed his forehead, chuckling faintly to himself, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind people make when they're trying not to fall apart. I told myself this was just a contract, he whispered, but I stopped believing that a long time ago. His eyes fell to your hand resting near the pillow. Without thinking, he reached out, brushing his fingers lightly against yours. He froze for a moment, then let his hand rest there, just barely touching yours. You make it really hard to let go, you know. He sat there for a long time, watching you breathe. The world outside had gone quiet, and so had he. Every part of him screamed to wake you up, to tell you not to agree to the divorce, not to walk away, to tell him what you really felt, but he stayed silent. Because Jungkook John was a man who never begged for love, not even from the one woman who unknowingly owned his heart. When you shifted slightly in your sleep, murmuring something under your breath, his eyes softened again. Sleep well, he whispered, rising slowly. Before leaving, he turned off the bedside lamp and looked at you one last time. The faintest smile ghosted his lips, sad, gentle, and full of everything he couldn't say aloud. I think I'm unlucky when it comes to love. I didn't able to win your heart in these months, but I hope you'll be happier, even if it's not with me. And then he quietly closed the door behind him. What neither of you knew was that the fate had already written a new chapter for both of you, one that began the moment your heart started beating for two. The next morning came quietly. The soft sound of rain tapped against the large windows of the John residence. You woke up early, much earlier than usual, your head still heavy from the restless night. You looked at the spot where Jungkook's jacket usually hung. It wasn't there. He must have gone to work already. Maybe it was better that way. You weren't ready to face him, not after what you found out last night. You sat on the edge of the bed, holding your flat stomach lightly. It still felt unreal. You were carrying his child, the man who wanted to end everything between you. I know this isn't fair, but I'll do this on my own. You whispered to yourself. He doesn't need to know. You got ready for work, putting on a calm face, the one you always wore in the office. The company lobby buzzed as usual. Employees greeted you politely. Good morning, Mrs. John. You smiled faintly. Good morning. You stepped into the elevator, heart steadying itself as you pressed the top floor button. When the doors opened, Jungkook was already there, standing by his office window, coffee in hand, tie perfectly in place. He turned slightly when he heard your footsteps. You are early, he said, voice even. So are you. What's the matter? You left early? He looked at you for a second longer before replying. Couldn't sleep. You nodded. Oh. For a few seconds there was silence, not awkward but heavy. Then you walked to your desk, flipping open your laptop, pretending to focus. Do we have the reports from yesterday's clients? He asked, breaking the quiet. Yes, you said quickly, handing over a folder. Everything is reviewed and signed. He accepted it, his gaze lingering on you a little longer than usual. You looked tired, paler than yesterday. You should take a break after this, he said. You shook your head, eyes still on the screen. I'm fine, sir. Sir, his heart dropped hearing that word. You hadn't called him that in months. He didn't like it, but he said nothing. Hours passed, you drowned yourself in work, typing, reading, organizing, anything to keep your thoughts away from the tiny heartbeat growing inside you. By noon, your stomach churned again. You pressed a hand over your mouth, breathing slowly, trying to fight it. Ryan? You froze. Jungkook was standing near your desk. He looked down at you, concern flickering in his eyes. Are you alright? You nodded too quickly. Yeah, just a little headache. You have been skipping lunch lately. That's not like you. Forced a small laugh. I'm just not hungry these days. He stared at you for another moment, the same unreadable gaze before finally nodding. Alright, but don't overwork yourself. He walked away, but his mind didn't. Something wasn't right. Later that evening, most of the staff had left. The lights were dim, the city lights glowing faintly through the glass walls. You sat alone in your corner, finishing the last batch of emails. Your fingers trembled slightly. You felt weak again and tired beyond words. You leaned back, whispering, just a few more minutes. When the door suddenly opened, you jumped. Jungkook walked in, his tie loosened, his expression unreadable. You are still here? You quickly minimized your screen. Just finishing some things. He frowned. At this hour? I couldn't sleep anyway. You replied softly. He studied you, your pale skin, tired eyes, how your hands rested protectively near your stomach without you realizing. Ryan, he said finally, walking closer. Tell me the truth. What's going on? Looked up startled. What do you mean? You have been sick for days. You barely eat. You look exhausted. Don't tell me it's just stress. You open your mouth but no words came. He stepped closer. Is it something serious? Did the doctor say anything? Don't hide from me, Ryan. Your heart raced. It's nothing, Jungkook. Please just drop it. But he didn't. His jaw tightened. Why are you hiding it from me? I'm not. You are. The firmness in his voice made you go silent. For a long second, both of you just stared at each other. Then Jungkook's gaze fell on the paper near your keyboard, the one you accidentally pulled halfway out of your bag earlier. It was folded, but he caught the hospital's letterhead and your name printed on it. Before you could react, he reached for it. Jungkook, wait. Unfolded it. His eyes scanned the page. The word pregnancy test positive stared back at him in neat black ink. Silence, the kind that made your heart stop. You froze, watching the paper slip slightly in his hand. Jungkook didn't move, his eyes stayed locked. Finally, he looked up, his expression a mix of disbelief, shock, and something heartbreakingly soft. You are pregnant? He whispered.